Oh no, America has sold itself out to foreigners. Foreigners are buying American debt. And that can mean nothing but a crisis for the United States, right, Scott?
You would think so if you follow the mainstream press. Yeah.
And in the news today, in fact, we learn that China has been outpaced by Japan in purchase.
China's been overtaken by Japan.
That's right, for treasury purposes. Scott, we've heard in the news that, of course, China used to be the biggest purchaser of U.S. treasuries or debt, and now it's back to Japan. It's kind of like the 1980s all over again. Japan is now number one as a foreign purchaser, I should say, foreign purchaser of U.S. debt. My God! This is always the sort of the sort of grist for the debt hawk mill about how foreigners are buying up U.S. debt. It's a really scary situation for Americans, isn't it, Scott?
Yeah, well, I guess they think that the Americans are borrowing U.S. dollars.
Borrowing U.S. dollars.
Let me say again. They think that Americans are borrowing U.S. dollars from China, and now it appears that they're actually borrowing the most U.S. dollars from Japan.
Yeah.
Which is strange, Jeff, because alternately the media claims that Japanese government is running out of yen, but somehow has dollars to support the American government.
That's a bit of a head spin, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
So, but I mean, this this news also illustrates a sort of larger point about, I mean, the whole sort of fear-mongering over foreigners buying, you know, the treasuries or any country's bonds in the case of a fiat currency issuing country like the United States. It's really nothing for Americans to be all that concerned about. Isn't that right, Scott?
No, it's nothing at all. It doesn't matter if it's a Japanese guy who has the dollar or an American who has a dollar. It's dollar's a dollar. Now, we're told constantly in Japan that disaster is going to hit when Mrs. Watanabe of Kawagoe City in Saitama Prefecture runs out of money and cannot support the Japanese government anymore, and the Japanese government is going to have to go hat in hand to foreigners
and raise its interest rates in order to the bond rates. Yeah,
this is going to they're going to have to raise the bond rates to attract these foreigners. Well, at the same time, Japanese buyers are happily buying American bonds.
Yeah, so where do they get the money from?
Well, that would be the money that they make in all their various overseas business activities. Sorry, the American dollars that they make, either in the United States or in other countries using the United States dollar. That's where they get the money from. As our friends on a certain website that we will not mention claim, Japanese companies are not investing in Japan. They are taking their yen and investing it in foreign countries.
How do you do that? I mean, you'd have to go to the Bank of Fresno and say, here's my yen, I want to buy. Well, I guess you'd have to buy dollars, right?
You have to buy dollars. You're going to the foreign exchange market and exchanging your yen for somebody else's dollar, somebody who wants yen, and the actual quantities of money in either the American system or the Japanese system has no effect on it. It's just the name on the account. There was a very good piece, short piece by Mike Norman, basically saying money doesn't flow.
No.
Money doesn't flow.
It sticks around.
This idea that money is flowing. Now, again, it can be different in the case of the U.S. dollar.
Because it's the dollarized economy, the global economy, that is. Yeah.
But I'm not familiar with any countries that that do business in Japanese yen, except for Japan.
Once you print a yen or a dollar, it never really goes away, does it?
No. It definitely doesn't go to buy U.S. Treasury bonds.
Okay. Now, getting back to the story about, the news about how Japan is now back, number one foreign purchaser of treasuries. They mention a couple of the main factors. One is that China, the pace of growth of the Chinese economy has slowed to a pretty low level, and also the authorities there are sort of stressing the quality of growth as opposed to quantity. That has something to do with it. And number two, also here in Japan, there's a shift toward buying securities by the pension fund.
Yeah, the idea that the pension fund has to be more aggressive, because how are we going to pay for the pensions of all these old people? As we always say, they're going to pay for it by typing numbers into a bank account.
And pressing a button.
But they seem to think that they have to take already existing yen and put it in a special account and then try to grow this account magically by investment, and there will be a lot of very highly paid individuals managing this account, and as I always say, they could just stay home and get the same salary. It has no impact. Now, of course, also we see this in many countries. The financial sector wants to get their hands on pension account money, management fees and the profits and everything, and basically that's what's going on.
All they should do is just put the money in an index fund, and then the snake oil salesmen don't get their commissions, really, right? They can't charge the consulting fees. You get a historically guaranteed return, right? You just put all that pension money into index tracking funds.
What a revolutionary idea.
Well, you wouldn't have to pay these guys in the Cayman Islands for their expert advice, because the index will do it for you. But anyway, the other thing we wanted to talk about, Scott, was this whole myth about debt servicing costs, because you've probably read somewhere that Japan pays a quarter of its budget to service its debt. Big myth, right? Scotty?
This has been pointed out by people much more qualified than us. They are including the maturity of debt and when they are rolling over the debt. That is not debt servicing. Debt servicing is when you repay the debt. Where you pay interest or you repay the debt. If you
repay the principal.
Repay the principal. If you're rolling it over, you're not repaying it, so you're not servicing it. It's complete nonsense.
It's just an accounting.
It's an accounting trick, and it's just basically seems to be there to scare people, to make them think that there's a problem that doesn't exist.
Why don't they reform that?
Because they want to scare people.
It's politically motivated, is it?
I would think so. Or they possibly are just stupid.
So there you go, folks. When we talk about debt servicing, for the most part, it's a large chunk of that reported figure is non-existent, because it assumes that the principal of, say, a 10-year bond is paid back every single year, which of course it isn't. It's only paid back once every 10 years when it hits maturity.
And of course we can't forget also about the servicing of the debt. So much of the debt now is held, and we could check on the exact percentage, is now held by the Bank of Japan. Interest payments and profits made by the Bank of Japan are paid 100% to the government of Japan.
Goes back to the government. So there's your great massive fiscal debt, the staggering, unsustainable Japanese debt. It's flowing back into government accounts. All that money. So that probably explains why all the doomsayers that say Japan's going to hit the wall has never hit the wall and shows no signs of doing so.
Yeah, and just one other thing that we forgot to mention about, with the pension fund branching out into international investment, to chase, I don't know, what are they chasing, like
stocks?
No, but I mean for investing in U.S. Treasury bonds, because they pay,
I see. Yeah.
They pay maybe 0.5% more interest, exposing themselves to huge potential foreign exchange rate risks. That will have to be hedged by sophisticated hedging techniques, which will require very highly skilled people on a high salary.
Yeah, well, and commissions and stuff, exactly.
Commissions and stuff. And basically putting money into pockets of these, you know, math types, finance guys, instead of putting the money into the pockets of the old people.
I think we have some sound taking place outside. Oh, it is the election campaign, I think, for the Tokyo Assembly or something. Anyway, quite a distraction there, Scott.
Yeah, it's a very exciting campaign, isn't it?
Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you very much for watching Truthonomics with me, Jeff, and
me, Scott.